Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to completely demystify the recent and, yeah, let's be honest, pretty daunting housing data. Our goal today is to empower your wallet using hard facts straight from the American Institute for Economic Research. If you're a prospective buyer and you're feeling totally overwhelmed by the current housing market, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're building a practical guide just for you. We're going to focus really heavily on understanding price-to-income ratios and figuring out the true impact of mortgage rates on your monthly affordability. So let's just jump right into the massive question that's stressing out pretty much every prospective buyer right now. It's dominating headlines, it's ruining dinner table conversations. Is housing genuinely less affordable than ever before? Well, according to the data, the answer is sort of. It really depends on how we look at the numbers. Today, we're going to dig into the exact metrics that tell the real story. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the sticker shock reality, paychecks versus house prices, the mortgage rate impact, buying versus renting, and finally ask if the absolute peak has passed. Let's get right into it. Starting off with part 1, the sticker shock reality. Let's look at why the market feels so incredibly constrained right now. It's honestly a pretty bizarre setup. Even though the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller Index hit an all-time peak in 2025 and has held remarkably stable into early 2026, actual transaction volumes have totally weakened. We have this weird disconnect. Median home prices just keep rising. They marked their 33rd consecutive month of record highs for March, but sales, they've basically stalled out. The spring buying season actually started on a really soft footing. It's actually supply constraints doing the heavy lifting here, not some frenzy of eager buyers. Sellers just aren't selling. That extremely limited housing inventory is what's artificially propping up these record price levels. You mix that lack of supply with weakening buyer confidence, and you get a market that is essentially frozen at the top. On a purely nominal dollar amount basis, housing is pretty much as expensive as it's ever been. Okay, moving to part 2, paychecks versus house prices. Let's see what happens when we compare those sky-high sticker prices directly to your actual paycheck. Before we throw a bunch of data at you, we really need to understand the specific tool, the price-to-income ratio. This is absolutely crucial for prospective buyers. Basically, it strips away the noise and looks at the pure earning capacity of a typical household compared to the median cost of a home. This is how we get a real, grounded measure of affordability, rather than just panicking over big, scary dollar signs in a vacuum. The real kicker here is comparing what previous generations faced against what you are dealing with today. While your nominal wages have definitely grown recently, the data shows they simply haven't kept pace. They weren't nearly enough to offset the massive price leaps we saw during the pandemic. We need to look at exactly how wide this gap between our earnings and our homes has actually become. Look at this contrast. It's wild. Back in the 1990s and early 2000s, a home typically cost roughly 3 to 4 times a household's median income. Today, we are looking at a ratio anywhere from 6 to 7 times median household income. This perfectly explains why buying a house feels completely out of reach. It is historically stretched way beyond our actual earning capacity. To really drive the shock value home here, as of February 2026, the ratio of median home price to median annual income hit this staggering all-time high, 7.14. When you grasp that number, you understand the core frustration of today's market. You're working harder, you might even be earning more than ever, but the finish line just got pushed back to more than 7 times your annual salary. Right, let's pivot from the sticker price to your actual monthly cost in part 3. The mortgage rate impact, because at the end of the day, borrowing costs change literally everything. Trace this timeline with me. A really strong case for housing being more expensive than ever emerges the second we factor in financing. We went from a pandemic-era low of 2.87%, skyrocketed all the way up to a peak of 8.06% in October 2023, and right now we're sitting around 6.35%. This isn't just a minor bump, it's a fundamental shift in how much it costs just to borrow the money. Pre-pandemic, a monthly payment on a median-priced home ate up about 20% of your income. But today, the combination of high prices plus those higher rates means those monthly payments are chewing up roughly 30% or more of a median household's income. From a pure cash flow perspective, this is one of the toughest, least affordable housing environments in modern U.S. history. And remember, this massive burden on your cash flow isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening during a period of broad, sticky inflation. Between January 2020 and March 2026, the overall cost of living jumped roughly 28%.
Even if you completely ignore energy and housing, inflation is still up about 26%. So not only is your housing taking a massive 30% bite out of your paycheck, but literally everything else in your life is way more expensive too.
With all these immense financial pressures squeezing our paychecks, let's look at part 4. The traditional rent versus buy calculation has completely flipped on its head. This is fascinating. The incredibly high barriers to entry have turned renting from a stepping stone into an absolute economic necessity for so many people. Because those elevated prices are crashing directly into higher borrowing costs, buying a home is actually more expensive than renting in the majority of U.S. markets today. That old saying about renting being throwing your money away, yeah, that simply does not hold up under today's mathematical reality. Let's say home prices just stay completely flat from here. Even then, prospective buyers are getting punished compared to renters. When you calculate a mortgage today, you aren't just paying principal and interest. You get hit with property taxes, extra transaction fees, and insurance costs that are absolutely skyrocketing. All these compounding factors put a severe, near all-time high burden on anyone trying to buy. Okay, let's move into our final section. Has the peak passed? Let's see if we can find a data-driven silver lining here. So, step by step, the data does suggest that the absolute peak of this madness, that crazy window between 2022 and 2025, is probably in the rearview mirror. First, general inflation has actually eroded the real value of home prices just a bit. Second, those massive double-digit price gains from the pandemic, they're gone. Appreciation has slowed to low single digits or even zero in real terms. And third, wage increases are slowly, finally starting to narrow that massive affordability gap. But, as the American Institute for Economic Research report perfectly points out, knowing the peak has passed doesn't magically make a house affordable today. Sure, mathematically, housing might be slightly less overvalued at the margins right now, but when you are staring down a 7.14 price-to-income ratio and a 6.35% mortgage rate, knowing we're past the peak offers zero practical consolation. The barrier to homeownership is still incredibly formidable. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this question to help you rethink your own financial game plan. You now understand the profound impact of price-to-income ratios. You see exactly how much those mortgage rates are chewing into monthly affordability. You know the facts and you see the constraints. So what's your play? Will you choose to rent and invest the difference, or will you adjust your budget to tackle those borrowing costs head-on? You're armed with the data, so the next move is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.